This is Ashley Hlebinsky. I'm a firearms historian and mental health advocate working with Walk the Talk America, and this is Meet the Pressers.
That was perfect.
It was.
That was totally perfect.
Meet the Pressers with Matt Mallory and Klint and Brought to you by Public Safety and Education and the Trigger Pressers Union.
Meet the Pressers is brought to you by Mantis. Mantis X helps shooters suck less. Next Level Training, makers of CERT training products. Meet the Pressers is also brought to you by these fine companies, shows, organizations, and our Patreon members. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. This is Klint and Matt Mallory with Meet the Pressers. Meet the Pressers is a safe place for trigger pressers to congregate and talk about guns, gear, gadgets, political activism, vice, and all kinds of other things that's Second Amendment related. I guess not that vice is necessary Second Amendment related, but that will tie into our special guest that Matt is going to introduce right now.
Ice might be Second Amendment related, right? Anyway, Ashley Hlebinsky, been on the show. I think this is third or fourth time that you've been on the show, maybe more. And
Maybe more. I was just thinking that.
Maybe
the former curator of the Cody Museum, a historian in heels, a historian of all things guns, and so many more, and like 2 or 3 more positions that you just said that you got accepted to. So why don't you fill us in on that? Thanks again for coming. Always glad to have you on.
Yeah. You want like a list of my resume or like
Of course, you know. Isn't that what we have to do? Like say this is what I do. People, find value in me for people to actually
right? Yeah.
take us seriously these days.
Except I'm an academic, so mine's a CV and it's 20 pages long, but I won't do that. But yeah, so
Elevator speech.
I wear many hats. I'm the executive director of the University of Wyoming College of Law's Firearms Research Center, which I started with my colleague George Moxery a few years ago. So I'm still working with that. Still doing museum stuff. I'm building a museum up in Canada. Still working with the LA Police Museum. About to start working with the Autry Museum. Have been a consultant for the Mob Museum for a decade. Just joined the advisory council for the Mob Museum and TV stuff still. And I just became vice chair of Walk the Talk America.
And that's what we originally got in touch with you to talk about here today.
Which you told me like 5 seconds ago. So
yeah, the Gene Autry Museum. I have a picture. I locked my mom and my wife into the jail at the Gene Autry Museum and took a picture of them. Yeah, that's
okay. I was like, where is that? And then
that was many years ago. That was a neat museum, but
yeah,
it'll be even neater once you get your hands on it, right?
I hope so. Great gun collection.
The Mob Museum. Well, when you said Canada, I'm thinking Canada. They got guns up there? What the heck?
Oh man, Canada, it's actually really interesting. Their arms history is fascinating because basically they had better gun laws for civilians until the machine gun bans in like the 70s or 80s, which is wild because they didn't have an NFA, right? So they actually were a lot more lax on their gun laws for a really long time. And then in Canada, you see a flipping of an issue with museums like in the US. Like I'm sure we've talked about this before, how museums in the US, unless their government, have to abide by all gun laws. Well, in Canada, kind of like in the UK and other countries where they have really strict civilian laws, museums actually get an amnesty. So if you have the licensing to have a museum, you can basically have anything. You can import anything. So this collection is really cool because there are some things that like I've never actually, well, I have now, but I had never actually seen before because it's really hard. There's like only a few in the country and we can't import them in. Whereas in Canada, they're like, well, you want it? Like we can get it. And so it's actually going to be pretty cool.
That's cool. And one of the other ironic things that I like to bring up in classes is, we think of 2 of America's most iconic rifles, which is the Garand and the AR-15, and both of them were designed by Canadians.
Yes, there's so much Canadian gun history. I'm learning really very, very quickly because we're gonna do a Canadian arms history gallery, and then we're gonna do a reference collection because the collection actually started as kind of like a World War I, World War II machine gun collection. So we've got this really cool stuff. So we'll make it more of a reference collection, and then we'll do a more traditional Canadian history.
How much of the museum work do you do where they actually bring you in as part of the board or part of the infrastructure, or is it they contract you to come in and consult?
I get contracted to come in and consult, and I do a range of different things. So like there, like with a museum like this, which the museum in and of itself has technically been around, but it's shifted leadership. The person who was taking care of it's not well, like he's gotten older, he's not able to take care of it. So the person that took over the license has, a real board, and we're building like a real full new museum. So when you're doing something like that, I do, founding documents, collecting plans, paperwork, basically setting up the system for care of their collection. So I do that kind of stuff. And then I do exhibit design and content creation from anything from, helping to source the artifacts to helping to decide, well, I make the decision as to where everything goes. The only thing I don't do is I don't build it myself. I can help, but most people don't want my help. And I'm not a designer. So like I can't, I tried to learn how to do the 3D software for to set up the exhibit. So like I draw stick figures and I'll be like, I want it here, here, and here. And then I give it to a designer and the designers are like, how about this? So that's like, those are the things that I don't do. I don't actually build anything and I don't do like the actual like renderings, layouts. I do everything else though.
And all this started from you doing an internship at Soldiers and Sailors in Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, right? And that's where like a lot of my cataloging, like basic, firearms knowledge came from, was soldiers and sailors and that kind of procedure. I actually just cataloged and putting the finishing touches on a catalog for a private collection that I did. And it's been a long time since I've done like a full catalog before. Because when I was at Cody, I was able to make other people do it.
Well, better that than like Grand Theft Auto. I mean, I've had kids come into the classes with like, yeah, they know so much about guns, and I'm like, and you put a gun in their hands, they shoot it, and they're like, oh my God. And I'm like, I thought you like handle guns. Well, only in the video games. So
Yeah. People
you
are
can get a
always
lot of
like,
knowledge.
when I was at Cody, people were always like, "Oh, I just wish I could have your job and like go into the vaults and like, touch all the guns." And I'm like, I don't know the last time I've touched a gun in the collection.
You take it up,
Like
go, oh, Billy, 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 Billy.
Stop, you're drooling on it. That'll cause it to rust. Stop breathing so heavily.
All right, so what's one of the ones in Canada that you got to see that you were like, oh wow, I never thought I'd see this in Canada, especially?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, the one that I really think is kind of cool is a selective fire Mauser C96, but I mean, I could have seen that elsewhere. But I thought that was pretty cool. And I always forget the name of it. We did an episode of gun stories with Joe Mantegna on it. It's like the American. I'm about to yell. Hey, babe, do you remember that gun, the Thompson looking gun with the flat pan mag for 22? You can leave this in. What's that? The American 180. The American 180. That's it.
Thank
You
you.
can leave that in. That's totally fine. I knew you were
Thank you, babe.
Thanks, babe.
Oh, because I always get it confused from like the AR 180, and I'm like, is that right? So yeah, so like that's a super cool thing that I hadn't seen. They exist in the U.S., but yeah, there aren't a ton of them because there aren't a ton of them that exist and are out in the world. But then just some more modern, quirky stuff. I personally really like all of the guns that have been like weirdly modified to Canadian law. That's kind of funny.
Oh wow.
Kind of like
Yeah.
ARs in New York modified to New York law kind of thing.
Or
Yeah,
California with the weird fins and stuff. It's like a 57 Chevy.
Yeah, yeah.
So if somebody's going to do a restore of a gun, is there, like with historic buildings, you can only do so much, and you have to, have materials from this type, and you can't do too much modernized stuff. Is that kind of the same thing if somebody had to restore a firearm, to make it period, if you will, or more?
Yeah. There's an interesting, so like in my world, we don't typically restore. The museum
It is
world
what
does
it
not
is.
typically restore unless there's a specific reason why you'd want to. Excuse me. So we deal in conserve, which is to just kind of keep it the way it is and to minimize degradation over time. Whereas restoration is a totally different, like, turnbull restoration where you can make the, color case hardening beautiful and all and then
Right.
swap out the stocks and things. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think for people who do restoration work. I don't think they're sourcing necessarily older parts
Yeah,
unless they're
outdated.
trying to find like I need a ramrod, and you're just trying to
Mhm.
find a period ramrod and replacing it.
Right.
Most of the kind of more modern stuff I see is like, they're using obviously modern wood and things like that. I mean,
Stuff
it's
from Pedersoli, yeah.
yeah,
They just make
yeah.
it look. They just make it look more, more period. But its materials are probably more current day.
Yeah, I don't think they're trying to source wood from 130 years ago. I could be wrong. I'm not a restoration specialist,
I
but
mean,
I'm
I could
sure
imagine if
somebody is, I'm sure,
somebody
yeah.
probably is. Yeah, I mean, if they're doing that though, then that gun's got to be even more valuable than you
Yeah, but
think.
oftentimes at a museum, a lot of it, the coolness of the gun is
Yeah.
like the barrel was ruptured because someone put a double
Right.
load in it during the
Yeah.
Battle of Antietam,
You
and
got the
this one, the
rust
stock,
and the
yeah, the stock was cut up by somebody that
patina.
killed 5 Indians or something like that.
The
There's
blood
always a story
splatter
there.
stays on it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Very cool.
so
Quiet.
did
We
you
got
guys
quiet
want to
on.
talk about walk the talk?
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Okay, just making sure, just making
You know,
sure.
you know, we have no
I'm
script.
really
We
good
just,
at tangents, so I just
yeah,
want to make sure.
No,
yeah,
love the tangents.
yeah.
So
We
real
love.
quick then on a tangent, let's
Yeah.
real quick revisit because I still get this these days, and I'm always trying to think back to I think it was the first episode we had you on when we talked about AR. And I think I mentioned this back when we had the episode. I'll say to my students, what does AR stand for? And they're like, oh, assault rifle, automatic rifle. I'm like, no, it doesn't. Civilian rifles, semi-automatic. AR is a term that's attached to, right? Armalite. And
Yep.
even though I love America, it doesn't stand for American rifle. And people their minds are blown with that, even to this day. All these years later, from having you on back then, I was saying that. But there is, I mean, that term assault rifle does, if I remember right from our conversation before, it does apply to, or there it does have a history, right? So,
Well, in legislation,
Well, no,
well,
legislation
yes, but
that's
I'm
propagated.
all
talking
you did
his
the quintessential. Well, yes and no. Okay, so assault rifle is a historical term. The Defense Intelligence Agency defines assault rifle as a single user portable gun, selective fire, chamber for intermediate cartridge, detachable magazine, and there's a few other things. And there's some other definitions, but
so
that's like
select fire is the key there, mainly
selective
when
fire
we're
and
talking.
intermediate
Okay,
cartridge is kind of the key. That's kind of like it's the in between world. And so assault rifle is a historical term. What I always tell people is you don't have to like the term, but you can't make it not exist.
yeah,
Yeah.
But what people confuse it with is the term assault weapon. And then it gets even more confusing from there. But assault
government.
weapon is a legislative term, although
Mhm.
there are some kind of historical origins to some things that have been labeled an assault weapon, like in the military. Like I think Knight's Armament or the Institute of Military Technology made a post once that was like an attachment to a gun, and it was called an assault weapon, an assault style. So there are kind of some different historical versions
Variants.
of it. But when people are referring to assault weapons now, they're usually referring to the kind of legislative catch-all, which is really different depending on where it's at. So the federal one was, was at 94. California had one in 89 that went through many iterations, still going through many iterations, but typically describes semi-automatic center fire, although California has rim fire, some rim fire and other things, firearms with specific features. So like a folding stock or a pistol grip or, a flash hider or something like that.
Just like
But the reason I said it gets even more confusing is when you mention the legislative piece, is some states have redefined assault rifle.
hmm,
I believe California uses assault rifle as well. It's not like as verbalized, but then New Jersey has assault firearm. So you do sometimes see it creep in, like in with some of the regulations where you'll see them actually using that term incorrectly in terms of historical
right,
significance. But yeah, it's very confusing. And a lot of people really hate the term assault rifle for, political reasons, but again, can't make it cease to exist historically.
Right.
But then a lot of people really hate it because they confuse it with the legislative term. The waters get so muddied.
yeah,
I remember when we reopened Cody, I did a PBS NewsHour special, and I had a very angry person in my comments because I was standing in front of, we have a display case called the Polymer Revolution, an exhibit called the Polymer Revolution. I wanted to call it something else, but it probably wouldn't have gone over very well.
What do you want to call it? Can you say?
Once you go black, you never go back. But anyways, there was many
There's a
colors.
T-shirt
There's
there
many
somewhere.
colors
Yeah.
in that gallery.
Yeah.
There's a blue
Yeah.
gun, there's green. But anyways, so we had a whole display on like the terminology. So what's in a name? And we had assault rifle, we had assault weapon, we had modern sporting rifle. And so we were talking about that. And I used the term assault rifle standing in front of several AR-15s. And some lady got really mad at me because she didn't understand the difference between it. And then I tried to stupidly explain to her that I was actually standing in front of selective fire AR-15s because the original AR-15s were selective fire, making them technically by definition assault rifles. And she didn't want to hear that. Didn't go over well.
Well, yeah. Some people's kids, right?
Right? Hey, but listen, at least it was a woman trying to tear me down, right?
Yeah.
Mansplain to me,
Mansplain, womansplain.
Womansplain.
Okay,
All
so
right.
let's get to Walk the Talk America. So first off, tell us how you got involved with that organization to start with.
Yeah, so a couple of things came together. The first being that I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder and PTSD a while ago now. All I know is it was right around Thanksgiving because it kind of ruined my Thanksgiving. Um, so I received these diagnoses, and I was kind of trying to grapple with what all that meant. Was very concerned about talking about it publicly because there's such a stigma around mental illness, especially as a firearms owner. But then for me, like it's my livelihood, So like if this gets out there, is it going to be problematic? So I didn't say anything for a really long time. And then I overheard, actually Cheryl Todd introduced us like via email, but nothing, Mike Sedini and Jake Wiskirchen, but nothing really major happened from that because we were just all busy. And then I was making dinner one night in Arizona and I heard a USCCA ad on the radio. It was just kind of like one of those like quick ads. It was like 15-second ads. And it sounded kind of like the on Family Guy, like the crazy wacky inflatable guy. Do you know what I'm talking about? The balloon guy. That was kind of the way the sound of that like ad. And they used the word crazy. I mean, it was like probably a 10-second ad and they used it like at least 10 times. And it was just like, why would you want a crazy person to have guns? That'd be crazy. And like this, it was just like the most, and I don't get offended easily. It was probably the most offensive 10 seconds I've heard. And I was just mad. So I like sent an email off to Mike and Jake, and I was like, hey, I want to come on the podcast and I want to talk about my bipolar disorder. And they were like, you're what? So, I did the podcast, and I will say that USCCA pulled that ad, and they're way, way better. Like that's not indicative of their relationship because they do a lot with Walk the Talk. They've been really great with that. I think that was just a very outdated ad that they didn't even know was still running. And when I told them it was running, I sent them the date and time because I emailed Mike and Jake right afterwards, and they made sure it was never on again. So just let it, like, I'm not trying to, harp on USCCA. They do amazing work with mental health work, but it was that ad that just got me. So then I basically came out, I guess. I did the podcast. I talked about my diagnoses. I came out on my social media because one of the other things that really got me was I got really frustrated by like the number of people who would like comment on my stuff being like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for everything you do for the Second Amendment. If crazy people couldn't have guns, if we just didn't let crazy people have guns, everything would be fine. And I'd be like, but I'm crazy. Like I was like, wow, that would, that would be really kind of rough if you knew that. So I basically decided to become really public about it. Mike and Jake asked me to join the board. This was many, many years ago. As I think you guys are aware, I had a service dog for a while who passed unexpectedly a couple of years ago. So I had a service dog. That's not the service dog that just barked, if you heard that. I don't know what he's upset at. He's looking at a ghost like we talked about.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But anyways, he's not the service dog. He's flunking out of service dog school pretty hard right now. But yeah, so I had a dog that was trained to track the changes in cortisol. So like I was just very, very open about kind of my journey on this. And so I joined the board and yeah, like I said, I just got elected vice chair. So I've just been kind of in the background over the years. And
I think crazy is like assault weapon where it's misused a lot, I believe.
Yeah.
Having a diagnosis seeking out treatment does not make one crazy.
Well, and I mean, when
Certainly
you
not.
look at the actual statistics of it, I mean, the percentage, like when I started doing the research, I read this like 900-page book called The Behavioral Science of Firearms. And I mean, it talks about how very, very little, I think it's like 3% of all people with diagnosed severe mental illness, like, are even considered prone to violence. And like it's something like that. I know I'm misquoting it, but like it's something super small like that. And then normally, if it's kind of like if violence were to occur, there's usually a compounding issue like drug addiction, domestic violence, that kind of thing. So it's like shockingly like it sounds like something that you like assault rifles, right? It's that must be the big issue, and it ends up being this really tiny percentage. So I wrote an article for Recoil too years ago about how I think that sometimes the only thing pro and anti-gun people can agree with is that we want to blame crazy people.
Well, I guess there's different levels, right? I mean, is right. You got somebody who's suicidal, maybe at one point because they lost a family member or something, but you get somebody who's convicted of a felony, they get out of prison, and it's maybe not a violent felony, or it was a long time ago, and they have it expunged. I mean, there's, everybody
Yeah,
goes
but I
through
mean,
different
it,
things
it
in life.
it is the semantics things, because that just, not to quote or semi quote Bill Clinton, but that kind of depends on what your definition of crazy is.
Yeah, yeah.
Really, some people would say someone that has suicidal ideations is crazy, but lose a child or lose a loved
Yeah,
one or
anybody
something, you may have those kind of feelings for a very
Yeah.
short time,
Very true.
or maybe for a longer period of time, because everyone handles stress differently.
And one of the big things that Walk the Talk does is because, Mike comes from the gun world. He calls himself the most ungun gun guy, something like that. I think I got that right. So, he's kind of got the connections in the gun world. So the organization does a lot of work working with the gun community to kind of reduce the stigmas about mental health. But then the other side of it is that Jake, who's a part of the organization's a psychologist, and he has a family therapy practice. And so we also work with clinicians to better understand gun owners, because that's one of the key things that a lot of people don't talk about, or the reason people don't seek, help is because they're worried if they are honest with their therapist, what does that mean for them? Can they have their firearms confiscated?
Right.
Can they have their firearms taken away from them? And I'll give an example for me, which is that like years ago when I was like super deep into all the Second Amendment testimony post Bruin decision, I was getting threats, and it was just, and people were coming after like me personally and my family, and it just got really, really bad. And it's, I did a bunch of articles and interviews about that. And so I got to a really, really bad place. And I was having to Google how, can I go and get help somewhere and still own guns? Like, I thought it was wild that I'm in this moment of like, potential crisis. And I'm like sitting there trying to find loopholes because I'm afraid to be honest with my therapist about how I can get help, right? Obviously, I've come out of it and I was, totally good and didn't end up doing anything like that. But I even was afraid to, as someone who's very well versed in it, and I was afraid to tell my therapist because I was living in Arizona at the time, and Arizona have Tarasoff laws, and Tarasoff laws are a big issue for a lot of people, big concern for a lot of people. Tarasoff was a court case out of, I think, Berkeley, California, where a guy told his therapist, I'm going to kill my girlfriend or my ex-girlfriend and her family, and he did. And the therapist did not report it because he wasn't obligated to report. And you see this a lot where there's like good intentions behind the laws, but then there's unintended consequences. Yeah. I think which you see a lot with everything. And so that was basically, if I'm remembering correctly, that you have, as a therapist, you have the obligation to report if the person like has a plan and the means or something like that. But that's very loosely defined. And then I think it started expanding out to like, your general practitioner too, like someone who doesn't necessarily, specialize in psychology. But what happens now is that like, what's the line? What's the threshold? So like, if your therapist doesn't
Subjective.
understand gun owners, right?
Yeah.
To some therapists, maybe just just owning a
Having a
gun and
gun.
having suicidal ideation means that you could use the
Right.
firearm, whereas that's not, the case a lot of the time. And so it's very unclear. And with terror stop laws, then they have to come and confiscate the guns, and it's kind of like a red flag,
Yeah.
or an extreme risk protection order, but
Yeah.
not quite.
Purple.
And so, I was aware of the terror stop laws, and I was like, okay, well, I'm just not gonna get help, and that's so messed up. That people feel like they can't do that. And then even if it's a state or an area or even a therapist that's really knowledgeable, people have this baggage in their heads, which is real a lot of the times, and sometimes it's not. And it comes to like the actual risk of losing your firearms. And so, but because people have that already in their brains, a lot of times they don't seek help because of that. They're afraid that they're going to lose their Second Amendment rights, and so then they don't get help. And that's a real shame. And they also just maybe don't think that the clinician would understand where they're coming from. And I think that that's also a fair concern that a lot of people have. And it's a really complicated thing. So working with clinicians and getting clinicians better educated on the nuances within the gun ownership community or communities, I guess, I think is incredibly important, because if we had more trust in their ability to kind of understand us, then maybe the stigmas would come down on their own to some extent.
Yeah, I
Well,
had a
one of the services that Walk the Talk America provides is, don't they have a database of pro-gun clinicians that people can reach out to for help?
Yeah, they're working on it getting a little bit bigger, but yeah, they certainly can point you in the right direction in some areas. And then I mean, I do a lot like with the research center in Wyoming. We do a lot with like safe storage and like temporary storage, because that's another piece of it, with is the kind of how do you mitigate access to lethal means in a time of crisis, and that's kind of the other part of what a lot of suicide gun organizations like NSSF do, and obviously Walk the Talk, and FRC, the Research Center, is kind of that access to lethal means and having voluntary FFLs that can take a firearm in a time of crisis, a voluntary
Yeah.
in a time of crisis, which is other really fascinating component of it, because there's like some laws out there that are actually pretty good laws that are basically liability waivers for FFLs and individuals who temporarily take a firearm, which should make more FFLs be willing to do it. Because right now the biggest concern with FFLs are, well, what happens if I give it back and then they use it, on themselves or others. And so some states like Louisiana and Montana have passed liability laws that basically give some are individuals and FFLs, and some are just FFLs, complete a waiver from liability. Whether it doesn't have to be a written, it can also be a verbal agreement as well. So that's hopefully going to ease. There's an example of a good law.
Yeah, for sure.
That will hopefully kind of make it so there's more options for people when they're dealing with something like that.
Yeah, I know Sarah Joy with Hold My Guns had recently, well, I guess it was about a year ago now, got the grants to start putting lockers in some of the different FFLs. So there are services out there available. We just
100%.
need to help them grow and make people more aware of them.
For sure.
One of the things I think that frustrates me is how much on the forefront the gun industry and the gun community has been for mental health care, and how little credit they get outside of the gun community. It's what I always talk about it is it's gun owners for the most part who are taking their lives, right? So it's incredibly personal to us. And it's amazing to see how much the gun community is doing. And it's disappointing when you're in like the bigger conferences with clinicians or even like gun control organizations, and they don't think that the gun industry is doing things, or they'll be like, I have this I have this novel idea. I have this novel idea, and I'll be like, yeah, NSS has been doing that for like 6 years, that there's like this divide of hatred sometimes across lines that people aren't able to recognize and see that the gun world is doing a lot of good. I think Walk the Talk, though, does a good job of kind of straddling both, because they do get invited. Woohoo! They do get invited to, I mean, I think they spoke at Everytown once, or maybe Mom's Demand. I mean, which is a big deal that they would like gun people, gun people there. And so they're kind of, Walk the Talk's kind of doing a good job of being able to kind of move in between the communities and at least have a seat at the table of conversations that gun people normally wouldn't have.
I agree.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Mike about New York, because when I started, I actually used their curriculum, the Walk Talk America curriculum in my 18-hour class here in New York, and he brought up actually how hard it was for people in New York to be able to seek out help because of how New York laws are
Yeah.
and how they easily would turn ERPO red flag on you because they feel like you're a detriment. In New York State, we call it 941. So somebody who's a danger to themselves or the general public, they could be brought in against their will.
Well, most of that state mandated class, as well as other state mandated classes, are basically 16 hours of telling you how you're going to get arrested because you own a gun.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
No, I'm not wrong.
I spend
wrong.
quite
Yeah.
a few hours talking just about what's illegal in New York State because I don't want people to get in trouble, and it's scary. It's sad.
Well, and did Mike mention there's a woman in New York City, I think, that has a lawsuit or has been working on something. I think her
No.
name's Sandra, who actually did like at one, and I'm gonna butcher this because it's probably been like 6 years since I've thought about it, but she had it, she had a little, mental health crisis. She saw someone for it. She was ruled okay. The clinician said she was fine, but the clinician filed with the state or the city or however it works. I don't know how New York works. That she wasn't okay. So it was the opposite. So this woman got her medical records and her patient records, and it said she's fine. And then she got a FOIA request and got the what she submitted that said the opposite. And I think she took it to get it reviewed, and they were still whatever. I think Sandra, maybe Donaldson. Maybe I totally made that up. And someone named Sandra Donaldson's like, "What are you doing? Don't throw me under the bus."
Yeah, now they're gonna
It's
sue you.
interesting. Ask Mike about it. I don't know where
Yeah.
it's at, but yeah, it was a big conversation about it was someone who went to the work, went to the effort to get the evidence, and it still kind of didn't matter.
Some of the counties in New York will do that. They'll do background checks. They'll do medical checks, military, dip in your military stuff. They'll interview or do background checks on references. It's crazy, but usually that's more in the liberal counties or down by New York City, Long Island, where they delve into that more. One of them locally here in upstate, they'll require you to get a notarized letter from your employer saying that they are aware you're getting a pistol license and they're okay with it.
Wow.
It's like, what the hell's does an employer have to
What does that have to do with
Yeah.
your innate ability to arm
Yeah.
yourself?
Exactly.
Yeah. In Pennsylvania, we've got these 302s, and basically, if someone is brought in for an involuntary assessment, even if they're let go, a lot of times when they apply when they have to buy a gun through the PIC system or get a license to carry, they'll get denied because they were brought in for a 302. They weren't admitted, but they were brought in for an involuntary assessment. It's a tricky situation.
For sure.
We don't have a red flag law system here in Pennsylvania, but that 302, 303 program is kind of skirts on it, and it's really yucky.
I remember when I was back in Delaware, I attended a mental health and gun symposium, and there was someone from the state that was actually talking about how they were looking to change the laws when it came to firearms ownership and mental commitment. And it was within the three, because there's the 72-hour, hold that you can put on someone that, is the involuntary hold. And then at the end of that, if you're fine, or if there was never anything wrong with you, then you get released. Well, at that point, this was probably, God, it was 15 years ago at this point. But they were looking at making it within that 3 days, which would mean that anybody could have you involuntarily committed, so that even if you were released after the 3 days, technically by the law, that counted as an involuntary commitment on your background check forms and everything. And so I don't think that ever went through, but I remember him talking about it, meaning it was people just hadn't really, well, maybe they had thought about it, but I like to think that people are are trying to do good rather than bad.
So you took on a new role at Walk the Talk America.
Yeah, I'm just the vice chair of the board.
Just the vice chair. Yeah. So what are your new responsibilities as the vice chair?
I don't know yet.
That's fair to say.
Whatever you want them to be.
Whatever I want them to be. So I've been more involved. So I talked about creating founding documents for the museums. Right now, I'm kind of working with Mike on some of the structural parts of the organization, setting up working on the strategic plan, potential fundraising opportunities. I'm in the first time in my life where the research center that I have in Wyoming just got $1 million from the government for programming. And so like I'm finally not begging people for money from like 5 different clients. So like I can kind of shift my gears, the conflict of interest, and shift my gears and help with some, fundraising plans for Walk the Talk. And then just PR. But I'm trying to help, with the kind of long-term stability of the organization. So an organization that I'm not like foreshadowing anything, but like an organization needs to live beyond the people who started it. So what I'm doing at the FRC right now, because the organization has to be sustainable beyond George and I, and so just kind of trying to set it up for the best success it can have. So that's kind of what I've been doing behind the scenes right now. I'm also writing like conflict of interest statements for the board members and just kind of really just getting everything we've got tight and clean because we just brought on several new board members. So we're trying to grow the footprint of the organization.
That's awesome.
That's good. That's good. When Kim Stolfer, the founder of FOAC in Pennsylvania, our Second Amendment group here, when he passed away, like we didn't know how to log into stuff. I mean, he micromanaged so many things and just took care of it himself because he would just he'd do it. And when he stepped down and Jim Stoker took over as president, I bumped up to vice president. There was a period there where it overlapped, but once he died, like, hey, do you know how to get into this? What's our code to get into our YouTube channel? I don't know. Like, well, we can do the security code. Where's it go? It goes to his cell phone. Where's the cell phone? I don't know. Those kind of things.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're probably not dealing with that little bit of detail, but
no, I don't have logins to anything.
yeah, there you go. But yeah,
and
no,
that's
it's good
how
that you
I
have
like
that structure. Yeah.
But no, but that kind of thing that like, how is this set up so that like everything is standard, everything is fair, everything is equal, like as board members come in and, and go and just making sure all those, really boring things are put in place so that you can do the good work without having to get stuck in some kind of paperwork issue down the road. And they've got great people. Like I'm not staff, like they've got great people that have always been handling like their finances and everything's great, all that. I'm just kind of trying to help with like the vision, I guess, and how to structure the vision so that it can be sustainable in a long-term plan.
So Mike being the ungun gun guy, I think we should start calling him 7-Up. Let's see if we can make that work. Because 7-Up was
soda.
the Uncola.
Yeah.
It's the Uncola, if you remember that. See, you might be too young to remember that.
I don't know.
Mike,
I just
Mike can
admitted that
remember
college was 15. I graduated college 15 years ago, so I don't know.
Okay, well, we're going to see if we can make that stick. So next time you see Mike, we're going to go, hey, 7-Up, what's up? And he's going to say, what the hell are you talking about? Well, you're the ungun guy.
I see a shirt. I see
Well,
a
it's the
shirt.
ungun gun guy. Ungun gun guy. That was
Yeah,
it.
the ungun gun guy, right? Yeah, okay. Now, half of the people that watch our show are not going to have any clue what we're talking about. But if you were a Gen Xer and grew up like watching TV in the 80s, you will remember that commercial.
Okay, yes, that I was born in '89. So yes,
so
I do not remember that.
You have a pass.
Great 6 months, but
you have a pass.
yeah.
I mentioned the McDonald's thing where the lady, 7-year-old lady, spilled the coffee on her lap, and I'll be like, anybody, raise your hand if you were alive in the '90s, and like, I was born in like, '99 or like.
It's funny. I was really proud of that '80s, like that I, was born in the '80s, and I used to be really proud of that. Now it's making me a little sad. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was born in the '70s, so that used to be cool too.
That used to be cool too.
Super. So what else? So what else you have going on?
Yeah,
what
what's
other
next?
projects or any?
Yeah, I guess the biggest.
Heard it here first on Meet the Pressers.
Heard it here first.
Or maybe second.
Well, because I was going to mention the grant, but we don't have to. I've talked about that a lot. I haven't talked about it with you guys. I don't think we didn't talk a shot, right?
No, we didn't go to shot this year.
Shot this year. First time in 15 years.
Yeah, so I just say for those who don't know, it's been all over the place, so I don't need to talk about it too much unless you guys want me to. But the University of Wyoming College of Law's Firearms Research Center, we got just under $1 million from the Department of Education. They did a semi-quincentennial grant, which is like my new favorite word, 250 years. And they did
say it again.
Semi-quincentennial.
Semi-quincentennial. That's good.
Semi-quincentennial. Microsoft Word does not believe that it is a word, but that is what the Department of Ed had listed. So the grant itself was for civics enrichment, civics education. Generally speaking, we wrote a Second Amendment, obviously, oriented program. So we are in the middle of that. And we're creating a historical law database with an AI search and summative tool for teachers. We're putting together 12 instructional videos that'll be about 6 to 8 minutes long on various Second Amendment topics. We're just doing the research for them now. Anything from like the text and structure of the Second Amendment, the colonial militia, National Firearms Act, the role of the ATF, Heller, Bruin, all of that. So,
Sweet.
and then the back half of that is we're going to host 8 webinars for teachers where they can engage on different kind of more modern topics, more flashpoint topics, and we'll bring in a scholar from both sides of the debate and kind of have them like, this is what this side thinks and this is what this side thinks, and then let the teachers kind of engage with those scholars and that in a civil discourse, and so that people can kind of see it modeled. Everyone always just sees it with like the pundits and the personalities, but they don't necessarily see the scholars who vehemently disagree but then go get drinks afterwards. So letting them kind of see that kind of, model better ways to have conversations about guns. And then capstone 2-day conference where we're going to pay 100 teachers or cover the expenses of 100 teachers. We'll do 1 day full Second Amendment scholarship, and then the next day will be workshop oriented. That'll be like, how do you navigate difficult questions in the classroom? Like, how do you get away from politics if a student brings it up? Like, how do you deal with all like the anxiety that people have about school shootings and Alice drills, and like how do you handle this topic in the classroom and break it away from politics, break it away from perception, and just teach the subject matter. And we'll have some level of kind of firearm safety. I've got Mike's actually on the advisory committee. We also have a representative from the VA, and then Kevin Dixie. I don't know if you guys. Kevin's on the committee as our firearms trainer. So we'll have a firearms safety component of it.
Good.
So that's, I've talked about
Very good.
that a lot, but I haven't talked about it with you. So that was kind of the big thing I've done.
Awesome.
And then I can't say a ton, but I just got to film as an expert on a new TV show that is not guns. That'll come out, I think, in the fall. And I picked up another gig from that gig. So I'll be on a couple of new shows as an
cool.
expert
So you were
beyond
saying,
guns.
So you were saying you like with the mob museum, that's something you've dealt with.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's really cool.
And you've been have you been doing stuff for TV shows that are mob based or?
Yes. Yeah. I just, last year I was on a show on Fox Nation called Wanted Dead or Alive with Sean Hannity. And that was all about gangsters. So we had a Dillinger episode, Bonnie and Clyde, and I was there specifically as the gun person for those. So we had, historians on that. But yeah, I do a lot of law enforcement, organized crime kind of shows because of, it's all interconnected, right? But then I used to do mysteries at the museum all the time, and I was talking about things that weren't guns. And then my side passion, my side hustle is, dark tourism. So I can't say what it is, but I can say that these things tap a little bit more into that side of my area of expertise. And dark tourism is why people are, well, many facets, but why people are drawn to sites of mourning, why people are drawn to the macabre, why do people go to battlefields, like why do people go to Auschwitz, and what motivates people to go someplace like that, what motivates them to take really cringe photos, in places like that. And then ghost tourism is a subculture of dark tourism, and I do a lot of writing of ghost tours for museums, historic sites, because it is a cash cow for institutions that don't have a lot of money. I told one institution here in New Hampshire, I was like, do you have any ghost stories? And they were like, or do you have any ghosts? And they were like, no. And I was like, can you find some?
So I teach at the local VFW, usually about once a month. And one of the president was there in the bar. I'm upstairs cleaning up the area where I was teaching, and his daughter came up, and we both scared each other because I didn't know she was coming up. She didn't know I was up there. And then she goes, and then it just came up like that scared me almost as much as the basement. And I'm like, the basement? She goes, oh yeah, we got a ghost down there. I'm like, really? She goes, yeah, everybody, it's haunted. The basement's haunted.
You're very light complected. She probably thought you were a ghost. So tell me about the ghost in the basement.
Which one?
Oh, okay.
I got some ghosts in basements too, in theory.
Oh, I've seen ghosts. I've worked in a recording studio, actually in New Brighton, and Actually, if you want to see the whole story about it, my son did an episode about it on his podcast called Cryptid Creatures with Augie Macro.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll
he
have to
did it.
check it out.
Yeah, he did a ghost episode, but
Ashley's dog just saw a ghost earlier.
yeah.
Well, right in the house, the 1980s house. Yep. Well, so like my first ever act as a consultant for the Los Angeles Police Museum was that I got them on Ghost Adventures, which a lot of people who are into that kind of thing really don't like Ghost Adventures, but like they literally gave Zach Baggins, the host, an entire network to do his show. So even if like purists don't like it, it was good because LA Police has got like everything, like the Manson stuff.
Oh yeah.
North Hollywood shootout.
Wow.
So if anything's going to be haunted, I was a ghost hunter for a hot minute in Delaware when I was in grad school. I did the history side of it, and I believed in ghosts more before I started hanging out at allegedly haunted places in the middle of the night with no power and all this equipment. I would say I was more of a believer before.
Well, here's a fun fact I don't think I've ever mentioned, but my wife hates going to hospitals because when she goes there, she literally feels like there's spirits and stuff there that like affect her. It bugs the crap out of her.
There's energy everywhere, man. You get energy out of rooms, off people, like to say that there can't be
out. Oh yeah, for sure.
I always joke that if ghosts are real, they don't want to talk to me. They're not interested.
My wife doesn't want to talk to me half the time too, and she's sitting on the couch.
I really appreciate the ground that we have covered in this episode, from assault rifles to mental illness to ghosts.
Hey, we
made some might argue.
We made the full circle.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
We're well rounded.
Yeah.
Tell Sean Hannity that he's got to stop saying, I don't even know what he says for the launcher, but it's Berna. It's Berna. It drives me nuts.
Oh, he uses a different. Okay.
Well, I think it's cute that you think somebody who's an on-camera expert gets to meet the host. The only show I really get to meet the host is Joe Mantegna's because I've been on it for 10 years. Joe's the best too.
I got to tell you the story, and maybe I told you before. The first time we met him in person, we were walking down and
SHOT Show.
At SHOT Show, and we were with Michael Bain.
Yep.
And he's, Joe and Michael, and they came over and he said, let me introduce you to Matt and Klint. And I shook his hand.
Worst decision Michael ever. Michael said,
I pulled him in very close to me and I said, I want to record you reading Green Eggs and Ham. And he looked at me like I was out of my mind. But could you imagine how awesome it would sound if he a recording of him doing Green Eggs and Ham?
Yeah.
He probably would have done it. He probably just didn't hear you.
He didn't, or he didn't understand.
Show, he probably just didn't
like them.
Loud.
It'll sound like every time I try to do Joe Mantegna, it turns into a bad impression of Christopher Walken. So I'll not do that right now.
He did just host the big black tie gala at the LA Police Museum. I asked him to host the
awesome.
Jack Webb Awards. So it's pretty cool. He's the nicest human I think I've ever met.
Well, that's somebody we haven't had on yet. So Ashley, if you feel like we're worthy, we'd love to, we'd love to have that connection. I don't like groveling, but that would be cool to have him on. I think we talked to Michael.
I don't know if he does the like podcast circuit.
Yeah.
He does have a tequila company, and he goes to like all the like he'll go to like Total Wine and do like meet and greets for his tequila brand, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I never met him outside of that encounter.
And you never will again.
Yeah, I've met a lot of people working in the film industry and music industry in my past life, but that was cool to meet him. But I think that would be a wonderful recording to hear him read Green Eggs and Ham.
If I actually arrange this, you would have to, ambush him on camera with asking him to eat green eggs and ham.
Oh yeah.
And then I'd get in trouble probably.
No, he wouldn't do that.
No, he wouldn't care. He would be like, "This is dumb," and he would still.
Don't mention it ahead of time, right? Because if you mention it ahead of time, it'll never happen.
Yeah.
So last thing, and you were mentioning all the educational stuff earlier, and I just kept wanting to drop this one thought that came into my head, but I'm going to do it now because I don't want to forget, and I'll kick myself if I don't. Whatever you do with all these educational programs you're putting together and stuff, just make sure you spell learning right. You can't be leering.
No.
I will. I do like me some AI. But I will make sure it's correct.
I'm sure you will.
Leering means something totally different.
Leering Center.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on the show.
Yes.
It's always a pleasure to have you on here. I look back at our previous episodes, and the ones with you are always some of my favorite because we laugh and we go down rabbit holes, and it's just
all
a
over the
good
place.
time. Yeah,
All
So
over
you-
the place.
You're not going to be at NRA Annual, correct?
No, the
Oh.
Cody, I'm going to be in Canada, and then the Cody Firearms Museum is opening up a new exhibit for the 250th, and they've got some pretty cool guns that they got loaned from different institutions around the country, and so I want to go support Danny.
Well, that's important. That's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Matt and I will be at NRA Annual. We've got a lot of stuff going on that we'll talk about after you're off here. But anyhow, we're sorry I won't see you there, but I'm sure we'll see you at the next big show. And we thank you for coming on the show tonight.
Yep, absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
What's the best way people can follow you and learn more about you and help you out?
Yeah, so if you want to just follow me on social media, I'm terrible at it, but I'm at History and Heels on Instagram and at official Ashley Hlebinsky on Facebook. Have fun spelling that. And then if you want to know more about like the research center, what we're doing, we're firearmsresearchcenter.org. We're at Firearms Research, I think on most platforms. But if you just go to our website, firearmsresearchcenter.org, you can find us, find all our stuff. There's lots of stuff on there. You should totally check it out.
Well, cool.
Very cool.
Well, thank you for coming on. Thank the dogs and thank Babe. Thanks, Babe.
Thanks, babe.
Thanks, babe. All right. Talk to you guys later.
We'll see you next time.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, everybody, this is Klint Macro and Matt Mallory with Meet the Pressers. We just wanted to give everyone an opportunity to plan ahead for the NRA annual meeting. We're both going to be there. Matt, what do you have going on at the NRA annual meeting?
I'm teaching my everyday self-defense class. I got 3 sessions, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, one each day. And then obviously you're teaching your stuff too. What do you got going on, Clint?
Conceal carry, all the must-know stuff. And then I'm also doing home defense, all the must-know stuff. And I'm also doing a seminar for the NRA Instructor Symposium, and I'll be doing that as Klint Macro, Regional Training Manager for Delta Defense. So I'll be talking about using seminars to drive more traffic towards your live fire classes. You and I both are going to be at
Voices of the Second Amendment.
That's right. That's right. We're sharing a booth with Cheryl Todd and her husband.
Gun Freedom Radio.
So it'll be good to share the booth with them. We're trying to work out the schedule now, but most likely we'll be on the mic Friday morning.
Saturday morning for a little, Saturday afternoon a lot, and then Sunday morning. If anybody's going to be there and they want to get on the show, then shoot us a message, Clint or I, and we'll put you send you over the Google link so you can pick a time slot.
Yeah, it's going to be a great time. We're going to be busy as hell, running all over the place. But hey, it wouldn't be our annual meeting if it wasn't busy as hell.
That's it.
Yeah.
Looking forward to seeing you again and hanging out.
Yeah, you too, brother.
Doing our thing.
And we'll see all of yins at the NRA annual meeting.
Yep. Stay safe.
Thank you for watching Meet the Pressers.
Lots of sponsors to make this show possible, like Mantis, Next Level Training.
Check them out and give them your business.
Meet the Pressers is brought to you by Mantis. Mantis X helps shooters suck less. Next Level Training, makers of CERT training products. Meet the Pressers is also brought to you by these fine companies, shows, organizations, and our Patreon members. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the show.
Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and click that little bell thingy so you know when the next episode's coming out. Support us on Patreon. Come to one of our classes. Host us to come to you and do one of our classes at your location.
And until next time.
Adieu.
Thank you for watching Meet the Pressers.